Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Tonic Accord. This is just a quick catch-up episode with me, one of your co-hosts, Drew Nepley. You are probably one of the millions of Americans either working from home or without work currently due to the quarantines and mandatory quarantines and stay-at-home policies because of the coronavirus. Now, obviously, this has dominated the news. I'm sure you've heard a lot about it, but I wanted to touch on an aspect of this issue that I don't think a lot of people are thinking about, which is the homeless. Those that don't have a home to work from home for, those that don't have a job or a place of shelter that where they can easily quarantine themselves. So what are they up to? How are they going to survive this? And what are some things cities are doing to combat the issue of spreading coronavirus among the homeless population? And sort of just kind of homeless issues recently in general. For me, who lives in Los Angeles, California, this is a ever increasing issue and a pretty pervasive problem, and it's only seemed to be getting worse. For example, in January earlier this year, LA County did a homeless count, and they did their best to get volunteers to try and count the amount of homeless people. Again, because it's not easy, they don't always have forms of identification. Some of them can go off the grid, and it's hard to track. So they had volunteers, and they spent a couple $1 million to try and count the homeless population in LA County. Well, it's been increasing over the last 10 years. In 2011, in Los Angeles, there was roughly 39,000 homeless people. In 2019, we have 58,000, close to 59,000 homeless people, which is up about 7 to 8,000 from last year. I mean, we're talking about 15 to 16% increases. The highest increase was on the west side of Los Angeles, which is where I work. And I have noticed a difference. Even in the last few years, there are more shanty towns underneath freeways. There are more people panhandling on the sides of the road. And it's definitely a problem that is very visible, very in your face, and still a lot of people don't tend to think about. Eric Garcetti, as well as Gavin Newsom, for their campaigns. Eric Garcetti is the mayor of Los Angeles, and Gavin Newsom is the current governor of California. They both said that homelessness and the housing crisis is our top priorities for their administrations. And they've tried some things. Eric Garcetti declared a shelter crisis in 2018. And he created the Bridge Home program with trying to place temporary shelters in each city council district. Gavin Newsom had a famed bout with Huntington Beach, the city of Huntington, because they did not agree to some of his terms, and he didn't want to give them funding for not establishing more rooms and shelters. Well, now we come to the problem where perhaps these new shelters may not be a totally good thing for the homeless, and they're kind of in this between a rock and a hard place. Obviously, the idea of the quarantine is to stay 6 feet apart from people, social distancing, trying to avoid as much contact as possible and act as if you have the virus. Well, for someone who may be homeless, this can be quite difficult. If you don't have a job and you don't have a place to stay, you're probably out in the streets, touching street posts, benches, park benches that a lot of people have touched, and you may not have access to places where you can wash your hands. You might have a lack of toilet paper. And then if you do decide to go to a shelter, that may make your chances of transmitting coronavirus even higher. Just yesterday, Gavin Newsom locked down the entire state of California, and unless it's for essential travel and business, such as grocery stores and obviously police department and stuff. But it is now legally enforceable to fine and jail people that are not adhering to these quarantine policies, the stay-at-home policies. So things are getting really serious, but not everyone has the opportunity to actually quarantine. California does have the largest homeless population in the United States, and 40,000 people live in shelters on any given night. A lot of homeless people already have significant health issues. Again, the lack of access to good health care is probably a part of that, and then just the environment in which you live in. When you're in kind of a dirty part of a city, you're probably exposed to more unhealthy habits, or you're exposed to more diseases and bacteria. And so a lot of homeless people are asking, where do we go? Homeless organizations have been warning for weeks that the coronavirus could cause catastrophic harm to unhoused communities. And officials in LA on last Tuesdays, tried to temporarily stop some of the sweeps of encampments. There are illegal encampments at some parts of Los Angeles that the police time and time again have to clear out and sweep. One is the Santa Ana River down in Orange County. Parts of the LA River, especially in the valley, I've seen them. You can have shanty towns of 50 to 100 people living in tents in unsanitary conditions. And then they don't really have much option, and they often get swept away and then they relocate. Well, one of the things is to not sweep them away currently and allow them to quote unquote quarantine in their tent as much as they can. But some men, a homeless man in his 70s, living in a Santa Ana shelter. This is according to The Guardian. He said, if I start coughing, they may throw me out and I will have no place to go. And so, people are really worried, like, again, they're caught between a rock and a hard place. They need a shelter because they're homeless, and having a shelter and access to clean water and perhaps some free food is obviously better than being out in the street without it. But then being in the shelter and getting sick, you risk getting the disease, you risk spreading the disease, and then you risk getting removed from that shelter. This 70-year-old man in Santa Ana said, if I catch it and die, this miserable life will be over for me. Really depressing. I hate to, I hate to bring so many, it's such a down and dark time already, but it is important that we realize that not everyone has these luxuries of working from home or quarantining. I think it's a problem that's going to bubble up increasingly more as more and more cities around the United States and the world in general start really closing down. We have people living in these shelters. Callie Rutter, who's 56, she predicts that the coronavirus would spread at the shelter just like the notorious Kramer cough has done in the past. Where she is, it's a mass shelter in the middle of winter, but even if it was summer, it wouldn't make a difference. These massive shelters, it's hard to often move these beds 6 feet apart and still make room for everybody. She said in that shelter, that Callie Rutter shelter, where she talked about, there are dorm-like cubicles she slept with 3 other women within a few feet of her. This is not at all, adhering to the policies of the 6 feet apart, and I think it would be hard to. And the other problem is there's no single state entity with oversight over the safety in these shelters. So it's not like, you can, with the swipe of a pen, start changing all of the policies within these homeless shelters. They're kind of mixed managed by different cities, homeless organizations, city councils, state councils. And so it gets complex, and there's a lot of complex needs. And structural problems that can go into, how do you quarantine 50,000, 60,000 homeless people in Los Angeles and hundreds of thousands across the state? It's going to be a very serious problem that we're going to have to deal with. And I just wanted to bring to light this issue that perhaps you as a listener of the Tonic Accord might have forgotten about. And again, I don't blame you, right? We have so many other things to think about, and we do have to think about our own health first. But when I live in a city that has such a pervasive and serious homelessness issue, you wonder, what are they going to do during this coronavirus? Now, to end it on a lighter note, there was a court decision, a little less related to the virus itself, more just housing and homelessness in general. There was a court decision made that that California's largest cities are subject to the Surplus Land Act, which says that cities must prioritize affordable housing on surplus publicly owned land. And so hopefully this will drive cities, especially Los Angeles, that if they do have surplus land, they'll start to use it for affordable housing. Because that's one of the main things with homelessness is if it's hard to house people if it's not affordable. The law dictates that California agencies must first offer available land to a developer that will turn it into a community of at least 25% affordable units. If a deal isn't reached, the agency can put the extra land on the market as long as a 10-plus unit project has at least 50% of the homes reserved for low-income households. So it's not like any surplus land has to be completely affordable housing, which I think that many NIMBYs, right? Not in my backyard. People would be opposed to. It kind of seems like it's a middle ground where, well, if you reach a deal on some surplus land, 25% has to be affordable housing. Now, will that stop this coronavirus crisis from spreading this disease around the homeless population? No, I don't think so. But at least it's something that, it's at least it's some good news recently. And this was from March 16th. At least it's some recent good news that there is something being done about the affordable housing problem in California. And, I just wanted to end it on a good note. Again, thank you for catching up with me on this unique and highly specific problem. But it's one that I think not only Los Angeles is going through, but homeless people around the world are probably asking themselves, how do I quarantine? How do I stay safe? And how do I social distance when I need to go to a shelter or if I need to stay out in the street? Thank you again for listening. I have been Drew Nepley with the Tonic Accord podcast. We will be back with our regular episodes. Again, we do 2 30-minute episodes, roughly 30 minutes a week. And then now we're trying these little catch-up informative episodes. So join me and Alex later this week, and we'll probably be discussing some great and interesting things. If you're out there, stay safe, stay healthy, wash those hands, practice social distancing. I'm sure you heard it all before. And thank you again for listening.